But now let's dig a little deeper into some of the specific U.S. states, and let's start with the land of 10,000 lakes. That would be the state of Minnesota. Now in Minnesota, they added a new PFAS notification requirement in early 2023, which was signed by the governor on May 24th of that same year. This requires reporting of PFAS in products sold in the state beginning January 1st, 2026. So this certainly does impact EEE producers and manufacturers. Now these producers and manufacturers must notify the MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, of any product sold within the state containing intentionally added PFAS. This notification even applies to products that have the currently unavoidable use designation. At a minimum, the reporting requirements should include the description of the product, the identification of the PFAS that's present, and its purpose, the quantity of each PFAS, and of course, contact information. Now, keep in mind, there are no exemptions for packaging or small businesses in Minnesota. Also, the law does allow the MPCA to grant extensions to manufacturers and producers beyond the January 1st, 2026 deadline. Now, like with other U.S. states, Minnesota has implemented phased-in restrictions. So as of January 1st, 2025, the sale of new carpets, rugs, cleaning products, cookware, cosmetics, dental floss, fabric treatments, juvenile products, feminine products, textile furnishings, ski wax, upholstered furniture containing PFAS is now prohibited. Next, there will be a ban on all products containing PFAS on January 1st, 2032, unless a currently unavoidable use has been provided. Now, our next stop is going to be the Pine Tree State, and that's the state of Maine. The original legislation was passed on July 15th, 2021, with PFAS reporting of all products landing on January 1st of 2025. However, an amendment was passed on August 9th, 2024. It extended the general prohibition date to January 1st, 2032. So that 2032 is a key date. This means that starting on that date, the sale of any product containing intentionally added PFAS, unless it's already prohibited, will be banned. Furthermore, on that August 9th amendment, it eliminates the general notification requirement for producers and manufacturers to report to the Maine Department of Environmental Protection any product containing intentionally added PFAS that's sold in the state. Now, this exemption applies unless the product is subject to a prohibition and that the DEP has determined the use of the PFAS qualifies as a currently unavoidable use. Now, like with other U.S. states, Maine has adopted phased-in prohibitions on various product categories containing intentionally added PFAS. So for starters, January 1st, 2023, carpet, rugs, fabric treatments, and that contain PFAS are already banned. Coming this January 1st, 2026, additional products containing PFAS, such as cleaning products, cookware, cosmetics, dental floss, will be prohibited. And also, this would extend to the product's packaging. On January 1st, 2029, the ban will expand to include artificial turf and outdoor apparel that contains PFAS, unless the product meets certain labeling requirements. Now the big one, the significant milestone that comes on January 1st, 2032, when the sale of any product and its packaging containing PFAS is prohibited, unless that use of that PFAS in a product is classified as a currently unavoidable use. This is the critical date for EEE producers and manufacturers to keep in mind. And then lastly, finally, on January 1st, 2040, restrictions will extend to the HVAC sector, including refrigeration systems, refrigerants, propellants, and their associated packaging. Now, the DEP will provide details on program implementation and establish criteria for submitting currently unavoidable use proposals related to upcoming prohibited product categories. So with the elimination of the general reporting requirement, currently unavoidable use proposals are now only required products in categories that are subject to sales prohibitions. So for the 2026 sales prohibitions, for example, which includes the cleaning products, cookware, and cosmetics, the DEP has already begun soliciting currently unavoidable use proposals. The rulemaking phase is expected to run through the summer, and producers and manufacturers' registration of currently unavoidable use products taking place, say, in the late fall into the winter. The currently unavoidable use process for later prohibition categories, including those, say, in 2029 and the big one in 2032, well, those will be announced at a later date. Now, Maine has designated certain product categories as exempt from this requirement. Of particular interest to EEE producers and manufacturers are the exemptions of medical devices, motor vehicles and their parts, semiconductors, including related manufacturing equipment and materials, and non-consumer laboratory equipment and electronics. So for our last stop today will be the land of enchantment, and that's the state of New Mexico. On April 8th, 2025, New Mexico became the latest state to adopt PFAS-related legislation. The new law directs the New Mexico Environmental Improvement Board, or the EIB, and the New Mexico Environmental Department, the NMED, to adopt rules that prohibit certain products from containing intentionally added PFAS, require disclosures and potential testing of products sold within the state, and establish associated penalties for noncompliance. By January 1st, 2027, manufacturers of products containing intentionally added PFAS will be required to report to the NMED. However, this reporting requirement does not apply to products listed under the exempted product categories or those designated with currently unavoidable uses. Now, the required reporting information is very similar: brief description of the product, the proposed PFAS used in the product, the amount of each PFAS, of course, contact information, but one little caveat: any additional information deemed necessary by the NMED. Now, New Mexico has built upon the legislation from earlier states by expanding the list of exempted product categories. New Mexico is learning from the earlier states, such as Maine and Minnesota, and placing these exemptions from the outset of the legislation. Notable exemptions relevant to EEE sectors include, again, medical devices, cooling, heating, and refrigerating equipment, motor vehicles and their parts, semiconductors, and the equipment and material used in their manufacturing, non-consumer electronics and laboratory equipment that are not intended for personal or home use, and products used in the generation, distribution, and storage of electricity, such as inverters or batteries. A surprising exemption is product containing fluoropolymers, which this is the first time a state has exempted fluoropolymers, which could be taken as a sign that New Mexico sees these as a different class of PFAS and has exempted them from the reporting requirement. Now, New Mexico's phased-in prohibition on products containing intentionally added PFAS will begin on January 1, 2027. The initial restrictions apply to products such as cookware, food packaging, dental floss, firefighting foam, and juvenile products. That would cover such items like car seats, clothing, and toys. Now, these prohibitions do not extend to electronic products such as computers, tablets, gaming consoles, peripheral devices. Then the next phase will take place a year later on January 1st, 2028, and that will include the similar categories such as carpet, rugs, cleaning products, and other items that you see there. The final phase of New Mexico's prohibition takes effect again on that magic date, January 1st, 2032. Again, beginning on this date, manufacturers will be prohibited from selling any product containing intentionally added PFAS in the state, but unless the product falls under an exemption outlined in the legislation, or the EIB has adopted a rule designating the use of PFAS in that product as a currently unavoidable use. Now, the EIB is authorized to adopt rules to identify and designate specific currently unavoidable use applications as needed. So with the PFAS Protection Act now signed into law, the EIB and the NMED will begin developing their rules and the regulations and reporting mechanisms to implement and enforce the statute's provisions ahead of the established deadlines. Manufacturers and other potential impacted businesses are strongly encouraged to closely monitor the rulemaking process, engage in the public comment periods. Now, GreenSoft will do our part, and will continue to monitor New Mexico and the other U.S. states for ongoing PFAS developments.
Watch the full-length video and gain access to our full archive of educational webinars at greensofttech.com/videos. And while you're there, learn about our premier solutions for environmental regulation compliance.